I don't remember exactly how long I sat there after the lawyer closed the file. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. It felt like time had folded in on itself, like I had dropped into some pocket of reality that wasn't quite real. Nothing? I finally whispered, my voice hollow. Mr. Caro, my parents' longtime attorney, looked at me with something between discomfort and pity. He adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and nodded solemnly. I'm sorry, Isabelle. Your parents' will was updated 3 months before their passing. Everything was legally verified. All of the assets, house, stocks, savings, trust, have been left to your cousin, Nathan. I blinked. Nathan? My mind went blank for a moment before it caught up. Cousin Nathan? The one who got expelled from college? The one who couldn't hold a job for more than 6 months? That Nathan? I could barely process the words. I looked around the room, hoping someone would speak up, say this was a joke or a mistake, anything. But the room was silent. My Aunt Karen sat there, arms folded smugly. Nathan tried to look solemn, but the corner of his mouth twitched, like he couldn't quite hide his glee. My older brother, Marcus, avoided my eyes completely. I felt like I was watching a scene in a movie, except I was in it, and the pain was real. Why? I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. Mr. Caro sighed. Your parents' final wishes were very specific. They said, and I quote, Isabelle has chosen her path. She has made her decisions. We believe this is what's best for the family. My stomach twisted. Chosen my path. 1,000 memories crashed through my mind. My decision to leave law school, my year of traveling, the blog I started, the countless arguments with my father over how I was throwing my future away. But they never disowned me. We still had dinners, awkward holidays, tense conversations, but we were still family. Or so I thought. I stood up slowly, ignoring the numbness in my legs. I didn't even say goodbye. I walked out of that office, down the hall, past the elevators, out onto the street. The cold air hit me like a slap, but I kept walking. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to move. 3 days later, I stood alone in the family house. My house. At least it had been. Everything was being packed up and transferred to Nathan, who was arriving in the morning to settle in. That's what Aunt Karen called it. I walked through the rooms like a ghost. The scent of lemon polish. The ticking of the old grandfather clock. My mother's favorite vase, still perched in the foyer. My father's coat, still hanging by the door. They left everything to someone who didn't even live here. In my parents' bedroom, I opened the drawer beside the bed. Inside was a photo of me as a little girl, tucked behind some papers. I held it in my hand, staring at my own eyes smiling back at me. A tiny note was scribbled on the back. To our Isabelle, never stop dreaming. Love, Mom. The breath caught in my throat. If they had loved me, why this? Why erase me from their final story? I sat down on the edge of the bed, the photo in my hand. And that's when I saw it. Beneath the drawer lining, a corner of something was poking out, yellowed and frayed. I reached down and pulled. A folded piece of paper. No, a letter. It was addressed to me. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The handwriting was my father's. Isabelle, if you're reading this, it means we're gone. And you've found out what we've done. I wish I could explain it all. But there are things you don't know. Things we had to protect you from. We made decisions we thought were best. But now, I fear you'll see them as betrayal. All I can say is, look deeper. There's more to the will than what you were told. And there are people you must not trust. I'm sorry, Dad. I stared at the page until the words blurred. There's more to the will? People I must not trust? The sound of a floorboard creaked outside the room, snapping me out of my trance. I stuffed the letter into my pocket and rushed out into the hallway. No one was there. I called out, but only silence answered me. Had someone been watching me? Or was my mind unraveling? That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed in a motel outside of town. My room was cheap and smelled faintly of bleach and mildew, but I didn't care. I kept the letter under my pillow. I kept hearing the same words over and over. Look deeper. The next morning, I went back to the lawyer's office without an appointment. Mr. Caro was surprised to see me. But he didn't refuse me either. I need to know, I said. Is there anything else? Any files? Any letters from them? Anything sealed? He looked uncomfortable. Isabelle, I told you everything. No, I interrupted. You told me what was in the will. But my father told me in a letter that there's more. Are you absolutely sure you gave me everything? He looked at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, he turned, opened a locked cabinet, and pulled out a thick folder. There was one more document, he admitted, but it was marked confidential, and… I'm their daughter, I snapped. Not some stranger. Let me see it. He hesitated, then handed it over. Inside, I found pages of typed legal language along with handwritten notes. And hidden among them was an alternate clause. One that had been revoked just weeks before their deaths. A clause that had my name on it. A clause that left me everything. The revocation was signed by my parents. But the signature, something fell off. I took a picture of the signature and emailed it to a friend I hadn't spoken to in a while, Noah, a forensic document analyst I once dated back in college. I didn't expect a reply quickly, but I got one in 20 minutes.
Belle.
That's not your dad's signature. It's forged. My heart dropped. I stared at Noah's message, my hand shaking. Forged. One word, and my entire world tilted. Someone had forged my father's signature on the document that revoked my inheritance. That meant the will, the one that disinherited me completely, might not have been my parents' true intention at all. And if that were true, someone in my family had deliberately cut me out.
But why?
I dialed Noah immediately. He picked up on the second ring.
Belle.
It's real? I asked, barely able to form the words. Not even close, he replied. There are inconsistencies in the loop patterns, line pressure, and spacing. Whoever did this was good, but not good enough. My mind whirled. Can you prove it?
Yeah.
But if you want this to hold up legally, you'll need a full analysis and maybe a second opinion. Whoever did this didn't just mess up a document. They committed fraud. Thank you, I whispered. I'll bring you the original if I can get it. We hung up, and I sat on the motel bed, staring at the wall, piecing it together. Someone had altered the will after it was signed. Someone had forged my father's signature. And that someone had to be very close to the family. I didn't want to believe it, but all signs pointed toward Nathan. Or worse, Marcus. My own brother. He hadn't said a word during the will reading. Hadn't defended me. Hadn't even looked me in the eye. A few hours later, I drove back into town, parked a few houses down from the family home, and watched from across the street. Nathan's car was in the driveway. The movers were gone now. The porch light was on. I could see shadows moving in the living room. Something about it made my skin crawl. I pulled my hoodie tighter, slipped out of the car, and walked toward the back gate. I still had my old key. If they hadn't changed the locks yet, I could get in. I waited until the living room went dark. Then I made my move. The door opened with a soft click. The air inside was stale, heavy with dust and unfamiliar cologne. Nathan's. I moved through the house like a ghost. Up the stairs. Past the bedroom.
Toward the study.
If there were records, legal files, anything that could connect Nathan to the forgery, they'd be in my father's safe. The safe was hidden behind the bookshelf. I slid it aside and knelt down. 4 digits. I didn't even need to think. I punched in 0927, my birthday. It clicked open. Inside, I found the usual documents. Property titles, old bonds, insurance papers. And one thin manila envelope, labeled only with a name. Karen Avery. My aunt. I opened it. Inside was a printed email chain between her and a man named Raymond Dillinger, a known estate planner. As we discussed, once the new draft is signed and submitted, Nathan's position will be secure. I've arranged for an expedited notary. No need to involve Isabelle. Ensure discretion. Isabelle is not to find out anything about the updated clause. I'll handle Marcus. I read the lines again and again. My aunt had orchestrated it. She had manipulated the will, pressured my parents, or maybe scared them. And Marcus, he knew. Maybe he didn't like it. Maybe he didn't agree. But he had stayed silent. He had let them cut me out. And now they were pretending it was what my parents wanted. My fingers curled around the papers, fury coursing through me like wildfire. They had stolen my family's legacy. And they thought I would just walk away. I was halfway down the stairs when a floorboard creaked behind me. I froze. Isabelle, a voice called. I turned slowly. Marcus stood at the top of the stairs. His expression unreadable. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice low. "I could ask you the same," I snapped. "I live here now." I held up the envelope. "Do you know what this is?" He hesitated. "I asked you a question." He looked away. "You weren't supposed to see that." My heart slammed against my ribs. "So it's true. You knew what they were doing. You let them erase me." "It wasn't like that," he said quickly. "Karen said you wouldn't fight it. She said you didn't need the money. You had your blog, your trips." I took a step forward. "And you believed her? Or did you just not care?" He didn't answer. I stormed past him, every step fueled by betrayal. "You let them lie. You let them take everything our parents built and give it to someone who doesn't deserve it." He grabbed my arm. "You don't know the full story, Belle." I yanked free.
No.
"But I'm about to find out. And when I do, you and Karen and Nathan, every one of you is going to regret this." That night, I scanned the documents, stored them in the cloud, and sent a secure copy to Noah, just in case. The next morning, I contacted a probate attorney. Her name was Vanessa Quinn. Sharp. No nonsense. She took one look at the forged signature and nodded. "I've seen worse. But this can get you back in the fight." I showed her the emails from Karen. Vanessa's eyes darkened. "Tampering with a will is criminal. If we prove this was intentional, we could press charges. But first, we need to get a judge to reopen the estate." She leaned back in her chair. "They're going to come after you now. Be ready." I was. That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "You're making a mistake. Stop before it's too late." No name. No signature. I ignored it. 5 minutes later, another message came. "You think this is about money. It's not. If you keep digging, you'll end up just like them." I stared at the screen, a chill racing down my spine.
Just like them.
My parents had died in a car crash. At least, that's what I was told. But now I wondered, was it really just an accident? Or had someone made sure they couldn't change their minds? I couldn't stop hearing that last message on repeat in my head. "You'll end up just like them." What was that supposed to mean? Were they threatening me? Or worse, was someone implying that my parents' death wasn't just a tragic accident? I opened my laptop, hands trembling slightly, and pulled up the original police report I had saved on my drive years ago. At the time, I didn't think much of it. It was an accident, after all, a rainy night, poor visibility, a sharp curve. Tragic but common. But now, with everything I had uncovered, I looked at it through a different lens. My father never drove that road at night. It was unlit and steep. He hated taking unnecessary risks. And they had been on their way home from an impromptu dinner meeting with Karen. I pulled out the coroner's report next. Sudden deceleration trauma. Broken necks. But what caught my attention this time was a note scribbled in the corner. "Brake fluid inconsistency noted during initial mechanical exam." Why hadn't I noticed that before? And more importantly, why hadn't anyone followed up? I called Vanessa immediately and told her everything. She was silent for a long time, then finally said, "You need to stop talking to me about this over the phone. Come into the office tomorrow morning. Bring everything." That night, I barely slept. Images of my parents haunted me. Their laughter. Their warm hugs. My dad fixing the old car in the driveway. My mother's voice singing softly in the kitchen. Had their deaths been orchestrated? Was my aunt capable of that? I didn't want to believe it, but she had already proved she could lie, manipulate, forge documents, and convince everyone I didn't matter. The next morning, as I pulled into the law office's parking lot, my phone buzzed again. "Unknown number. You were warned. Now it's too late." I scanned the lot nervously. Nothing. No movement. I walked briskly inside and headed straight to Vanessa's office. She was already waiting. "I have something for you," she said, handing me a printed transcript. "What is this?" "It's a deposition I pulled from an unrelated civil case Karen was involved in 2 years ago. It wasn't public. She paid to have it sealed. But I have contacts." I scanned the transcript, and my breath caught at one line. If I had the power, I'd take that entire estate myself and run it the way it should have been run. Karen had always talked about the family legacy, preserving the name, the reputation, the business. She believed my father had made soft choices, giving to charities, supporting independent creators, funding mental health programs. She called it wasted potential. She wanted control. She always had. And the moment my parents were gone, she got it. "I want to confront her," I told Vanessa. Vanessa shook her head. "Not yet. Let's keep collecting. You're getting close to something dangerous. But you need to be smart." Too late for smart. I needed the truth. That night, I made a bold move. I went straight to Karen's house. She lived in a restored Victorian mansion on the edge of town. Cold. Immaculate. Lifeless. She opened the door herself, looking surprised. "Isabelle, I need to talk to you." Her smile was tight. "This isn't really a good." I stepped inside without waiting. "Did you kill them?" Her face went pale. "You were the last person to see them alive. You hated how Dad ran the family name. And I found the documents. The emails. You forged the will, didn't you?" She closed the door quietly behind me. Then she turned around and laughed. But there was no joy in it. "You always were too clever for your own good." I stared at her. "So it's true." She walked slowly toward the fireplace, arms crossed. "I didn't kill anyone. But I won't lie to you. I was relieved. Finally, I could make the decisions they were too sentimental to handle. You forged Dad's signature. I fixed what he was too cowardly to change." My hands clenched. "You took everything. From me. From them. You think they cared about legacy? They gave it all away. Do you know how much money your father donated in the last year alone? Nearly a quarter of the estate. I saved what was left." My voice was ice. "You destroyed everything they stood for." "I preserved it," she said calmly. "You were never part of the plan. You ran off. You made your little videos, your blogs, your freedom journey. You abandoned the family. I didn't abandon them. I just didn't want to be you." Her eyes narrowed. "I'm taking this to court," I told her. "I've already hired someone. The forgery alone is enough to have you arrested." "You won't win," she said, the smile returning. "You have no idea what you're walking into." "We'll see," I whispered. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." I left her house shaking, but it was done. Now I had confirmation. Karen had admitted to manipulating the will. Maybe not to the murder, but her indifference was worse in some ways. Back in my motel, I played the audio recording I'd secretly made during our conversation and uploaded it to Vanessa. She responded in less than 5 minutes. "This changes everything. I'm filing the injunction tonight." The next day, I got a call from Marcus. "I need to see you," he said.
"Please."
"Just hear me out." I agreed to meet him at a cafe, neutral ground. He looked terrible.
Pale.
Unshaven. Bags under his eyes. "I didn't know," he began. "About the breaks. About what really happened." "But you knew about the will." He nodded, ashamed. "Karen said you wouldn't care. That you were off chasing freedom and didn't want anything from us." I didn't know how deep she went. I should have asked more questions. I crossed my arms. "Why are you here?" He hesitated. "I found something," he said finally, sliding a flash drive across the table.
It's an audio file.
Dad recorded a conversation with Karen. It's dated 2 days before the crash. I plugged it into my laptop and played it. Karen's voice, sharp, frustrated. "You're making a mistake, Daniel. That girl doesn't deserve the Avery name. She's just like her mother, weak." My father's voice, calm, resolute. "You don't get to decide who my daughter is. Isabelle has more strength in her little finger than you'll ever have." Her response was cold. "Then don't say I didn't warn you." Actions have consequences. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. He knew. He knew she wanted me out and he was trying to protect me. And 2 days later, he and my mother were gone. That audio file stayed with me. Even as I tried to sleep, I heard my father's voice repeating over and over. Isabelle has more strength in her little finger than you'll ever have. He had believed in me, even when I'd run away from the family business, from the expectations, from the whole Avery legacy. And now, everything was crashing down around Karen. The lawsuit Vanessa filed had already started causing waves. We weren't just accusing Karen of forgery, we were asking the court to reopen the entire estate settlement. But it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice. And I was going to make sure the whole world saw the truth. I returned to my apartment the next day to find my front door slightly open. Panic flared instantly in my chest. I pushed it open with a trembling hand. The place had been ransacked. Papers scattered. Drawers open. My laptop was gone. But they had missed one thing, the portable backup drive I kept taped underneath my kitchen drawer. I yanked it out, stuffed it into my coat pocket, and got out of there fast. I didn't call the police. I called Vanessa. They know we're close, I said. We need to move quickly, she replied. The judge has granted an emergency hearing. It's in 72 hours. I booked a hotel room under a different name and stayed off social media. I was officially in hiding. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. The night before the hearing, Marcus called again. She's panicking, he said. She's making calls, trying to spin the story before it hits the court. Let her panic, I replied. She's about to lose everything. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, Izzy, for not standing up for you sooner. His voice cracked. She poisoned me against you, and I let her. I didn't say anything. Part of me wanted to forgive him. Part of me wanted to hang up. But instead I whispered, just tell the truth in court. That's all I want. Day of the hearing. I stood outside the courthouse in a tailored black dress, hair tied back, no makeup. Just clarity. Truth. Karen arrived 30 minutes later, flanked by 2 high-powered attorneys and wearing a designer coat that looked like it had never touched a hanger. She didn't even look at me as she walked past. But her face was pale. The hearing was closed door, limited to key witnesses, attorneys, and the judge. Vanessa stood tall beside me as we entered. She was fierce, composed, and laser-focused. This is it, she whispered. The proceedings began. Vanessa laid everything out with surgical precision. The discrepancies in the will, the forged signature, the missing brake fluid notation, the suspicious behavior following the crash. Then she played the audio recording for my father. The courtroom fell silent. Karen's face drained of color. But she didn't break. Not yet. Then came the testimony. Marcus spoke first. He admitted to ignoring the red flags, to trusting Karen too much, to standing by while she manipulated the will and smeared my name. She told me Isabelle was dangerous, he said quietly. She convinced me she didn't deserve any of it. But she was lying. I see that now. Then Vanessa called me. I walked to the witness stand slowly, heartbeat thundering in my ears. I lost my parents, I began. And I was told I didn't matter, that I had walked away from them. But the truth is, I was never invited to stay. I was pushed out by someone who wanted control more than connection. My voice didn't shake. Karen didn't just take the estate. She took their memory. She tried to erase me. The judge asked a few follow-up questions. Then Karen was called to the stand. And finally, she snapped. You're all fools, she said, venom in her voice. Daniel was throwing everything away. This family needed someone strong. Someone to make the hard choices. You mean someone to commit crimes? Vanessa asked. Karen laughed bitterly. You think it was me who cut the brakes? She hissed. I may have forged the will, but I wasn't the only one who wanted them gone.
The courtroom gasped.
The judge leaned forward. Explain that statement, Ms. Avery. But Karen clammed up. It was enough. We had her confession, and something even darker lurking beneath it. That night, I sat in my hotel room staring out at the city lights. We'd won. Karen was charged with fraud, forgery, obstruction. The case was being reopened. The estate was frozen pending full review. But her last words haunted me. I wasn't the only one. Was there someone else? Someone even closer to my parents? The mechanic? A business partner? Someone from inside the company? I opened my father's old journal, the one I hadn't touched since before they died. There, wedged between 2 pages, was a name. Raymond M. Never trust him again. I called Vanessa. Who's Raymond M? She was quiet for a moment. That's Raymond Martin, your father's former CFO. He was forced out, wasn't he?
Yes.
For misappropriating funds. But no charges were ever filed. I felt the weight of it sink in. Karen hadn't acted alone. And my fight wasn't over yet. The courtroom battle had shaken the foundations of my family legacy. Karen was behind bars, awaiting formal charges. Her face was all over the news, once praised as the steel backbone of the Avery family business, now disgraced and exposed. But I couldn't celebrate. Not yet. Because the real enemy might still be out there. Raymond Martin, a man my father once trusted with every dollar, every project, every plan. A man he had written off in a private journal with 6 words that now chilled me to my core. Never trust him again. Dangerous. Greedy. I called Vanessa and told her what I found. She paused for only a second. I'll dig. In the days that followed, I tried to return to some kind of normalcy. I stayed with an old friend across town, far from the media glare and the vultures circling my family name. I walked every day. I read books again. I visited my parents' grave for the first time in years. I'm sorry it took me this long, I whispered, my fingers brushing across the engraved stone. But I see you now, and I see what they tried to do to us. For the first time in years, I cried without shame. Then, a week later, Vanessa called. I found him. Raymond had moved to Florida and reinvented himself. New business. New identity. But the trail of corruption followed him. Shell companies. Offshore accounts. Discreet purchases tied to Avery funds before my parents' deaths. He had motive, Vanessa said. And Karen gave him access. Together, they could have taken everything. My chest tightened. Can we prove it? Not yet. But we're close. One of his ex-employees is willing to talk, on record. That night, I found myself staring at an old photo of me with my parents. I must have been 10. My mother's arms wrapped around me. My father's hand resting gently on my shoulder. I had forgotten how safe that felt, and how far I'd drifted from it. But now, I was returning. Not as the rebellious, runaway daughter, but as the woman my father believed I could be. The next hearing came faster than I expected. Vanessa stood by my side once again as we petitioned the court to unseal the financial records of the Avery estate and reopen the investigation into Raymond Martin. We had enough to freeze his accounts and launch an inquiry into potential conspiracy. The judge approved it without hesitation. And just like that, the trap was set. 2 weeks later, Raymond was arrested. His crimes weren't just financial. They were deadly. Investigators found emails, payments, and silent partnerships that tied him directly to the modification of my parents' car. He hadn't cut the brakes himself, but he had paid someone to do it. And Karen had looked the other way. I sat in the back of the courtroom as the verdict was read. Guilty. On all counts.
Fraud.
Conspiracy. Manslaughter. Justice. It didn't bring them back, but it gave them peace. And it gave me something I never thought I'd feel again. Closure. With Karen and Raymond gone, I was named the rightful executor of my parents' estate. It was overwhelming. There were warehouses, companies, properties, patents. But I didn't want to run it all. Not like they did. Not like Karen tried to. I sold off the parts that no longer felt right. And with what remained, I started over. I built a scholarship in my parents' name. For artists. For dreamers. For those who, like me, were told they didn't belong. And I used a portion of the estate to fund shelters for women and young adults seeking freedom from toxic family systems. One day, months later, I received a letter. No return address. Inside was a photo of the mechanic who had tampered with the car.
Dead.
No explanation. No note. Just silence. Someone had tied up the last loose end. And not by legal means. I burned the letter. Not because I didn't want justice, but because I had already found mine. And I didn't want vengeance to take its place. Months turned into a year. Life moved on. But I stayed rooted. Grounded.
Free.
One afternoon, while walking through a community center built using my parents' legacy, I ran into a teenage girl sketching quietly in a corner. I asked her what she was drawing. She looked up, eyes shy but hopeful. "My future," she whispered. And in that moment, I saw myself. Not the Isabelle who was erased from a will. Not the girl who lived in shadows and silence. But the woman who gave it all back to the world. And then, just before I left, she asked me, "Were you ever scared?" I smiled. All the time. "So, why didn't you quit?" I leaned down and said the only thing I knew to be true. Because I knew they were watching. And I wanted them to be proud. Final line. I walked out into the sunlight, knowing they hadn't left me with nothing. They left me with everything that mattered.